Okay, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be part 2 in the series on tuning stock Tomos A3 cylinder barrels for performance. Part 1 was cylinder porting, which is what takes place within the cylinder itself. This is going to be port matching, which takes place outside the cylinder. So that's at the exhaust ports, the inlet port, and where the transfer port meets the case. Just like with cylinder porting, you can actually use the same type of tools for doing it. These are Parkside kind of rotary tools with the associated bits that go with it. But because the ports are on the outside, you can actually use alternatives, such as a die grinder, fitted with a rotary burr like this, or a conventional electric drill, also fitted with a rotary burr. And the reason you can use a conventional power drill or die grinder with a 6mm shank rotary burr is because you're working on the outside of the cylinder barrel. And so you've got no restrictions there. If you were to try and use the same size rotary burr inside, you'll find it'll get caught and bind up and either spin the drill or snap the actual rotary burr, which is why on moped engines, because there's very little room inside there, you've got to use the smaller rotary burrs. So the process of port matching is actually quite simple. All you need is the gasket that goes with that port. So in this case is the inlet port. It's the inlet port gasket. As you can see, that hole in the gasket and the hole in the port are actually a pretty good match. So there's nothing need to be done here to match that to the gasket. Let's compare it to the inlet manifold. So here's a stock Tomos A3 inlet manifold. As you can see, that is not a round hole. So if you put the gasket up against it, you can see the amount of material around it that needs to be removed to allow it to match up. To do that, it's quite simple. Just mark it with a pen. I've marked the area that wasn't lining up with a black pen. And there you can see the pen shows you where you need to remove material to match the port. And here's one I made earlier. See, it matches. So the inlet manifold now matches the inlet port because we've used the gasket between the two of them as a template. The same process could be applied to the exhaust port. As you can see here, this is before port matching, this is after port matching, as well as the transfer ports before and after. Now you can also use port matching for fabricating new parts and not just modifying existing ones. In the case of this barrel here, I've done quite a bit of porting inside the barrel, which has allowed me to open up the actual inlet port itself on the outside, which means that a stock inlet manifold, even if it's been opened out, is now too small for that opening. So what I'll do is make a gasket that fits this area here with the same size diameter hole in it, and then use that as a template to manufacture a new inlet manifold. Now, there's no point doing that if you haven't done any of the work on the inside, because you'll still have a restriction, which means you won't gain any more performance. Okay, so that was port matching in probably the most briefest and simplest way I could explain it to you. I could probably do a third video on reboring stock cylinders to fit larger pistons, but I won't because that's no longer a 50cc moped, so it's cheating. And also, most people haven't got access to a lathe to do that kind of work. Cylinder porting and port matching, though, can be done by most classic moped owners with access to a power drill and a rotary tool, which means it's the sort of thing you can do at home. Anyway, hope you found these videos interesting. Please press that little like button down there if you've enjoyed them. If not, no big deal. And if you subscribe, it is much appreciated. If you haven't, please do so because it does help boost the channel. And I'll see you again soon. Take care.